about this one? Should I move it?
Yeah, that one's kind of dead right now.
Testing. All right, we're going to get started with our program. If everybody can make their ways to their seat. Come sit up close. Come sit up close. Welcome. Thank y'all for spending your Saturday morning with us. Well, my name is Janessa Jamo. I'm the Executive Director of Ignite Utah Action. So excited to have you all here. I'm also going to call my team up because y'all deserve some appreciation. Come up here, please. Come on, Ash. Come on, Jackson. Obaid, Satwick. Sandrine. Can y'all stand on the stage, please? We have Ash, who's our comms director. We have Satwick, who does a lot of research for us for our infographics that we post on Instagram. We have Sandrine, our civic policy manager. We have Jackson, who's going to be launching a really dope Gen Z male podcast. So y'all will have to tune into that. And then we have Obaid. He's going to be our moderator today, so you'll hear a lot from him. So Ignite Utah, I want to give y'all some fun facts. Thank you, team. We were started because Utah is the youngest state in the nation. So our Gen Z electorate is becoming our largest electorate here in the state and also nationally. Right now, the Gen Z population makes up a third of the entire electorate nationally. So our slogan is Gen Z is not our future, they are our now. It's time to get activated now. In midterm elections, Gen Z are only turning out to vote at a 10% rate. We have a June election this year coming up, our state election. So we have our register to vote posters everywhere. Please make sure you're registered. We lose out on a lot of Gen Z vote because we move a lot. And every time you move, you have to update your voter registration. So make sure that's all updated so that y'all can turn out to vote for these amazing candidates we're gonna have on the stage. So for our program, we're gonna start with a data presentation. In order to create these panel questions, we actually did a statewide Gen Z survey where we asked constituents, what are your top issues? What are your top priorities? How can we make civics and politics more accessible to you? And what type of questions do you wanna ask these candidates? So that's where we got all this data. We're gonna go through this presentation. I'm also going to introduce the candidates, we'll have the panel, and then we'll have some time to mingle afterwards. If you're here with the media, we just ask that you hold all media interviews until after our program ends at 1 p.m. All right, I'm gonna start by introducing the candidates, and then if you can make your way up as you hear your name. Ben McAdams. Ben McAdams is running for Congress on a platform that promises to oppose Trump's tariffs, driving up grocery and everyday costs, expand access to affordable housing for first-time homebuyers, and lower prescription drug prices by protecting coverage and standing up to insurance company profits. His campaign also calls for defunding democracy and the rule of law, protecting the environment and defending human rights and opportunities for every Utahn. Please welcome Ben McAdams to the stage. Next up, we have Senator Kathleen Reeby. Kathleen Reeby is running for Congress on a platform that promises to increase funding for the weighted pupil unit, to reduce class sizes and raise teacher pay, allow the government to negotiate lower prescription drug prices, and expand paid family and medical leave. Her campaign also calls for responsible management of public lands and clean water initiatives to protect Utah's environment, overturning Citizens United, and supporting independent redistricting commissions to end gerrymandering. Please welcome to the stage Senator Reeby. Michael Farrell. Michael Farrell is running for Congress on a platform that promises to raise the federal minimum wage to at least 20 an hour, to sponsor Medicare for All legislation so that every American has guaranteed access to affordable health care, and to abolish ICE, while providing a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. His campaign also calls for passing the Green New Deal, banning congressional insider stock trading, and reinstating the protections previously guaranteed by Roe v. Wade. Please welcome Michael Farrell. Nate Bluin, or Senator Bluin. Nate Bluin is running for Congress on a platform that promises to end AI-driven price-fixing algorithms and take power back from tech excesses that are stacking the deck against working Americans. His campaign also calls for passing the Green New Deal, reforming the criminal justice system by ending the war on drugs, abolishing private prisons, ensuring that housing is recognized as a human right through the Housing First model, and dismantling ICE and replacing it with a system focused on safety, dignity, and civil rights. Welcome, Senator Bluin. Liban Mohammed. Liban Mohammed is running for Congress on a platform that promises to support Medicare for All legislature, rebalance federal priorities by investing back into the American people rather than fueling global conflict, and to hold big tech accountable through strong federal standards that protect people, workers, and democracy. His campaign also calls for abolishing ICE and ending immigrant detention, saving the Great Salt Lake with legally enforceable minimum lake levels and guaranteed paid parental leave for working parents. Please welcome Liban. Louis Villarreal. Louis Villarreal is running for Congress as a Democratic Socialist on a platform that promises to support Medicare for All, ending U.S. military funding and weapons sales to the Israeli government, and to create a federal pro-worker organizing agency that actively helps workers in every industry unionize. His campaign also calls for investment in U.S. green energy manufacturing to create stable trade and union jobs, and expanding the House of Representatives beyond its outdated 435-seat cap to improve constituent access and democratic accountability. Please welcome Louis. Ava Lopez Chavez. Councilwoman Lopez. Ava is running for Congress on a platform that promises to dismantle ICE and reinvest those billions into schools and local infrastructure, set a legally mandated water level for the Great Salt Lake, and expand community land trusts so Utah families can actually own the homes they live in. Her campaign also calls for supporting the Rio Grande Plan to remove the longstanding east-west divide in the district, overturning Citizens United, and banning corporate PAC donations to crack down on special interests. Please welcome Councilwoman Ava. And now to introduce our moderator and a great friend, Obaid Baraksai. Obaid Baraksai immigrated from Kabul, Afghanistan, and has spent the past... Oh my gosh, thank you, I'm so sorry about that. These are not in order. Here we go. Dave Robinson. Dave Robinson is running for Congress on a platform that promises to block the Little Cottonwood Gondola, modernizes Utah water laws to ensure every homeowner's right to clean, reliable water is protected by the Utah Constitution, and transform underutilized city blocks into high-quality workforce housing. His campaign also calls for ending the HOA litigation machine that operates as a shadow government with total immunity, and championing local control and government transparency. Please welcome Dave Robinson. Obaid Baraksai immigrated from Kabul, Afghanistan, and has spent the past decade working in Utah's policy and community spaces to expand opportunities for immigrant, refugee, and first-generation populations. He speaks 7 languages and has led work in grassroots organizing, statewide policy research, conflict resolution, and international peace building. After graduating at the top of his class from Westminster and completing 2 post-bachelor fellowships, including one at Harvard, Obaid founded a startup and a nonprofit, spoke at the United Nations, and was recognized by Utah's Multicultural Affairs Division and Utah Global Diplomacy for his impact. He is Ignite Utah's Director of Data Strategy and Operations, and recently became a graduate student in International Affairs and Economic Policy at Columbia University, where he continues to pursue his passion for strengthening Gen Z civic participation and making voting more meaningful for young people in Utah. Please welcome Obaid.
Hi, everyone. I'm Obaid. Thank you all so much for coming in today. So we're going to get started. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a data presentation, as Janessa said, from the statewide Gen Z survey that we collected. And then we're going to do a panel where there are going to be over 11 questions, and all the candidates are going to receive 60 seconds to respond to each. And after that, there's also going to be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So as we're going through the presentation and also the panel, if you come up with any questions, please write them down, and then you're going to have the opportunity to ask them later. So welcome. So Utah's Gen Z voter landscape. So there's about 463,725 registered Gen Z voters in the state of Utah, where 35.6% of them are unaffiliated, which is the swing block. And our survey collected responses from 544 folks throughout the state of Utah. And as we can see in the breakdown of the party affiliation, we have 41.1% Republican, 35.6% unaffiliated, 14.6% Democratic, and then 5.2% Indian Americans, and then other 3.4%. And if we can potentially increase the Gen Z civic engagement by 1 to 3%, that means we're going to get 13,900 new decisive voters, which is huge if you actually think about it. So we just need that little bit of a push. So what should Utah's next member of Congress prioritize? So out of all the responders, the responses that we got, and 40% of them chose cost of living and housing affordability as their top issue, where we're not surprised. It's been a state issue. And second category is jobs, wages, and economic opportunity as 22%. And then the third one is healthcare and mental health access at 16%. And then climate change and environment, and then education, immigration, and public safety. So 40% for the cost of living is twice as much as the second category, meaning that the majority of responders really resonate with a lack of options and affordability when it comes to housing. And 62% of them, if you also combine housing and jobs, that's going to be 62% of the voters that actually do care, and then 78% of them care about housing, jobs, and healthcare. So these are some of the quotes that we wanted to directly pull from the surveys, so that you have the opportunity to read them, look into them, to see what people actually say. So someone said, "I make over 100,000, have no debt, no children, and I still don't know if I will afford a house in Salt Lake Valley in the next 5 to 10 years." Another, "We're a family of 4 in a 1-bedroom apartment. Our 2 kids sleep in a large closet. We cannot fit another child." Another, "I'm living out of my car because I cannot afford housing. I'm a young adult who did everything right." And then another one, "I live paycheck to paycheck, just buying groceries. I'm living to work, not working to live." And also another sort of data point that I wanted to share is that a lot of the responders are majority white, and that sort of speaks to the lack of access of where we can target communities of color in different places, lack of access to technology, devices, and a trust in the community, right? Because I feel like sometimes surveys do be picking, folks that are easier, right, to get the responses instead of other way around. So know your constituents' issues. So as I talked about, housing is at 40%, where 77% of the responders identified as white, and 12% of them as Latino, and 46% of them earn between $0 to $49,000 a year in annual income, and 50% of them never married. So for jobs, 73% white, 18% Latino, 57% of them earn between $0 and $49,000 a year, and 84% of them do not hold a bachelor's degree or advanced. And healthcare, 16%, 62% white, 23% Latino, and then 43% of them, nearly half of them, earn between $0 and $49,000 a year, and 53% of them being women. And then for climate, majority white and male, 52% hold bachelor's degrees, and 61% of men, reversed. And then for education, we're at 6% of, to remind you again, so these percentage points, 40%, 22%, are what Gen Z wants to prioritize. They want the candidates to prioritize some of these policy issues, and we can tell that housing is at the top, and then we see that immigration is at 5%, sort of like at the bottom. So what would make their vote actually matter? So when it comes to voting apathy, we asked in the survey, what would make your vote feel like it matters? 46% of them believe that seeing real change in their daily lives, like changes with housing, jobs, debt, would tremendously help. And another 27% of them said that policymakers asking for young people's input year-round, this is something that they can sort of like feel more connected to local politics, but also to the candidates. And another one, system does not work for people like me. 17% of them responded, and 17% could be translating to over 100 folks, right? Or at least like over 80 folks. And then the last one, policymakers following through on promises to young voters. And then when it comes to civic accessibility, we asked in the survey, what makes civic participation accessible to you? 26% of them said that they're already as engaged as they want to be, which actually can be really hopeful for Gen Z. They're actually engaging, they're out there in the community protesting, and then another one is more convenient options and easier access would be better to make it easier for them to connect better with the candidates, but also like with their communities. And then clear information on issues and how to participate got 21% of the votes, and proof participation leads to real results, 19%, and then financial support and stipends at 8%. Who or what connects Gen Z to Utah politics? So 26%, so the responses in this category specifically were 89, where 26% of the 89 responses said that lack of personal connection or engagement with local politics, which is such a big issue, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times we don't necessarily feel connected to our candidates, to our local leaders, and it's really important to acknowledge that. And then social media and news are the primary source of information. We're not surprised. And influence of friends and family in staying connected, and direct involvement with political representations and organizations, dissatisfaction with the political climate or specific policies at 16%, and then participation in protests and community activities at 8%. Who is struggling the most and where they actually show up? So as you can see on the right side, we have 58%, 57%, 51% that sort of directly speak to the income bracket. So for example, 58% of anyone who chose immigration to be as their top priority make less than $50,000 a year. 57% of them who chose jobs as their top policy priority make within that income range, and then 51%, 46%, as you can all tell. And there's also like certain things that you can sort of like pay attention to. For example, like majority of the white men who make the most money care more about the climate than any other category. And the folks who actually make the least amount of money with the least education care more about immigration. So sit with that data point. So the data candidates need to know about each issue. So for gun violence, actually 100% of the responders were women. And for immigration, 71% of anyone who picked immigration as their top policy priority also disapprove of Trump. And 61% were men for climate, and then for healthcare, 53%, majority of them were women. And here there was also like another sort of like a data highlight, is that this was a section that Latino community cared the most about and sort of like felt, I guess that they could resonate with this category more. That's at 53%, so 23% of the Latino community responded to this one specifically. So, and then you can look at the jobs that 57% earn under 49K, and then for the housing, as we said, which takes the majority of the issue, sort of the biggest policy priority, they also make less than 50K a year. Okay, education level shapes every priority. So here again, as I sort of like mentioned earlier, the folks that make the least amount of money care the most about immigration, and the folks that make the most amount of money care the most about climate in the very bottom. And then gun violence, jobs, housing, education, and healthcare are sort of like in between. Okay, now let's hear from the candidates. So this is where we start the panel. So this is an opportunity where I'm going to be asking our amazing candidates some questions that we already gave them in advance. So I'm going to go over some ground rules to make sure that everyone follows them. And we would absolutely love it so much if everyone stayed punctual, because so that we could get to all the questions. There was a lot of really good questions that we sort of came up with, me and my team, so that you can hear directly from the candidates about some of these really important issues affecting Gen Z throughout the state of Utah. So the rules. Each candidate has 60 seconds per question. Janessa will signal at 30 seconds and then 15. So she's sitting right there. Second, Ignite Utah is nonpartisan. Every candidate receives equal time and identical questions. Third, questions come directly from 544 Gen Z Utahns who completed the Grow Progress survey. 4, responses will be shared back with survey respondents and published. And also, just so you know that this is all recorded as well, in case you wanted to take a look at some of the data points. Okay, so question number 1. Okay. Question number 1, thank you. The math does not work. 40% of 544 Gen Z respondents named housing as their top priority, more than jobs, healthcare, climate, education, immigration, and gun violence combined. So question number 1 for all the candidates. What is your specific actionable plan at the federal level to bring housing costs down, not in the long run, in your first term? So we can start with candidate McAdams.
Okay, thank you. Look, I don't need to tell you that this is an important issue that's facing not only Gen Z, but really across age groups. And the frustrating thing about this is a solvable problem. You guys are working hard, you are working full-time, and you still can't pay rent, and home ownership feels out of reach. This is a solvable problem, and there's things that we can do about it. I have a lot of ideas on this. This is actually something that I work on every day in my day job, is advising cities and counties and states on affordable housing policy. One idea that I'm especially excited about is how do we build on infill development around transit stations. So last fall, I wrote a piece for the Brookings Institution about how the federal government can encourage the building of affordable housing near transit in walkable neighborhoods, places where you can walk to a bar, walk to a restaurant, take a bus to school, take the train to work. I wrote a proposal that got noticed by Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester, who reached out. I worked with her staff to develop legislation that was introduced earlier this year called the Build Hubs Act. And my hope is that even before the election, we've been able to pass this legislation that I conceived to bring down the cost of housing.
Thank you. Candidate Reby.
Thank you. Housing has definitely been on our mind. In this last legislative session, we talked about this at length. When you think about housing here in this state, we think about how they're building nonstop. And I don't really feel we can build our way out of this. I think we have a short-term rental issue, and we also have multiple housing issues where people own 3 houses and you can't afford to have 1 house. So creating a program where there's a level of tiers of how you're going to be taxed in your houses is something we really need to think about, because somebody shouldn't have 3 houses while you can't afford 1 house. The other thing about it is building our way out of it. I mean, Salt Lake, in my estimation, is being too crowded, too overdone. And so I don't really see that we can build ourselves out of it that quickly. So I'm thinking that we need to start thinking of other ways to make things more affordable. Giving young people tax credits when they're first homeowners, providing them with assistance when they're trying to grow a family. We are the richest state in the nation, so for this state, it seems like it would be easier. Nationwide, we still need to start thinking about those short-term rentals and the gig economy and how it's really putting a negative impact on our communities. So that would be my suggestions.
Thank you. Candidate Farrell?
Yeah, everyone here knows housing costs are ridiculous. In 2009, the average price of a home was $200,000. In 2026, it was $415,000. So from the beginning of mankind to 2009, it went up $200,000, and then it doubled in 17 years. That's not sustainable. So my first term in office, I will increase federal housing supply by creating incentives for higher density housing development in urban areas. I'm a tax attorney, so every answer I'm going to give is going to be tax related, but I would pass legislation for a renter's tax credit, and I would convert the home mortgage interest deduction into a homeowner's tax credit so that every homeowner benefits, not just wealthier people who can take advantage of the deduction. And then federal investments in public transit so that areas that are further out have ease of access to good transportation to get into urban areas. So that's going to increase housing supply and development in those areas. And I think that would solve a lot of our problems immediately. So.
Thank you. Candidate Blumen?
Thank you. I've lived through this. When I moved to Utah a couple decades ago, I could live in a basement apartment for $200 a month. That is certainly not something that we are seeing these days. I know people are struggling right now. We do need urgent, immediate solutions. We need to take on the big corporate landlords who are really damaging our communities. We need to fight back and ban algorithmic pricing. This is something that could happen overnight, that would happen quickly, that would disallow big corporate landowners from using so much of their market power to extract every single cent they can from tenants. We need to increase tenant protections as well. Utah is one of the worst states in the nation for tenants. People are getting taken advantage of, and I know what it's like to deal with a nasty landlord. So we need to focus on taking on the big folks who are really making this into a commodity and making prices so much higher for everyone. And we can do that by looking at a couple easy solutions, not easy solutions, but big solutions like fighting the influence of these algorithms on our housing prices.
Thank you. Candidate Mohammed?
We have a housing shortage supply of 3 to 4 million homes across our nation. So the notion that we don't need to build and increase the supply of homes is entirely incorrect and will not solve the problem. So I have 4 solutions here to address the housing crisis that we have in the state of Utah and our nationwide. Number 1, corporate takeovers. Nearly a quarter of our single-family home purchases are by large private equity and hedge funds. This is unacceptable, and I will be supporting this bill from Elizabeth Warren called the End Hedge Fund Control of American Homes Act. The next thing we need to do, invest. We need to dramatically increase the amount of affordable and social homes throughout our nation and our community here in Utah, whether it's urban or rural. The next thing we need to do is exactly what he was talking about, protect our renters. We need to take on the algorithmic price fixing that is being done and pricing us out of our homes so people of my generation and generations older than me and the ones to come are able to actually be able to afford their homes. And the last thing that I want to take on that hasn't been mentioned yet is we need to streamline the development of our homes. Right now, the zoning laws that are being done on the municipal levels across the local governments around are making it extremely difficult to build fast. So we need to work from the federal side with those governments.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to be a little bit more punctual with time, so thank you. Candidate Villarreal?
So, I mean, we have to fundamentally change the way that the housing market currently looks. There is mass amounts of issues, and number 1, we have to increase home ownership. What did UK do after World War II to increase home ownership when they had record lows? They built homes off of government funding and sold them for no profit. It's so simple. And on top of that, one of the other highest data points for people talking about what do we need, and what's important to us is jobs. We can create jobs by building more homes. I'm from the West Side. I think, the only candidate in the Democratic primary who is from the West Side. Every other neighborhood in West Valley and Magna is dilapidated and torn down. You don't think we could redevelop those, put new infrastructure, create tons of jobs, create tons of homes, and then sell those homes at no profit, at cost? This doesn't even cost the government anything except for the initial investment because the homes are still being sold. These homes could be sold for way cheaper than what's out there on the rest of the market, provide a public option, and pressure the private market down.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez. Is it not working?
There you go.
Test,
Okay, cool.
test. Okay, there we go.
Awesome.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here on a Saturday morning. And I just want to give a shout out to the 3 Gen Z candidates on the stage. It's the first time in a congressional race that you'll see someone from our generation be up here and challenging the status quo. And I think the most important thing, I build modular housing. So I've dedicated my life to persevering and really trying to come up with this challenge. And as a council member, I can tell you right now, the biggest influence in our housing market is the way we develop. It's the fact that we leverage debt to create profit margins off the back of people that need housing. So I have in place policy solutions that follow the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. It just passed last Thursday. It is historic in nature. It brought the most funding we'll ever see for single-family homes, modular housing, and it passed last week. What we need are more land trusts. We need to get corporations out of purchasing single-family homes, and we need to increase condominiums, townhomes, and middle housing that we can actually afford. There's lots of ways to control the cost, but the most important thing is getting each of us down payment assistance and to make sure that we get affordable variances, loans, and rates that we can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson.
Likewise, as far as thank you for the invite to be here. Housing is a real issue. We have the price of home here in Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County. A lot of people with a median income cannot qualify for them. As a home builder, when we bring developments on the market, I will get multiple phone calls from institutional investment groups saying, we not only want to buy 1 or 2, they want to buy the entire project. And I said, and if I come on the market with 30, 40, 50 homes, they said, we are ready to pay cash now. Nobody, as far as the young couples, young individuals that are looking to purchase can keep up with these investment groups. So I would first and foremost, we have to stop them from competing with the first-time home buyers here in Utah. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sharing. So now we're going to move on to question number 2, corporations versus constituents. Question. Young voters told us housing affordability is a major concern, especially as some large investors buy up single-family homes. The Senate just passed a bipartisan housing bill by an 89-10 vote that includes limits on institutional investors. As this issue moves to the next stage in Congress, what policies would you support to make housing more affordable for families and first-time buyers in CD1? Candidate McAdams?
Sure, thank you. I told you about the Build Homes Act that I wrote legislation, helped to write the legislation for that. What that would do would provide in federal incentives and federal support to build multifamily housing near transit. So this is my passion. I would love to nerd out. More than 60 seconds will allow, but I, after I left Congress, created an organization called Putting Assets to Work, where we study and work with cities and counties across the country to identify surface parking lots next to light rail, salt piles for de-icing roads that can become housing. This is going to be able to inject low-use land for multifamily development, and the Build Hubs Act would do that. But I will tell you that is not all. We do need to restrict corporate ownership of housing. A hedge fund is always going to be able to outbid a family on a home, and that is wrong. That's not a free market, that is a rigged market. So we've got to restrict that ownership. We've got to bring down the cost of housing. We've got to increase the ability to for first-time homeowners to buy a loan, to finance a mortgage. All of these things are things that I'm working on as a member of the National Housing Crisis Task Force and already working on to pass legislation in Congress.
Thank you. Candidate Reeby?
Thank you. I think we should mix it up who goes first every once in a while. Thanks.
Yes, I can mix it up.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate that. I think that when we think about these policies, it's not just about what we're going to do moving forward, it's what we're going to stop. So there's many of you might have heard of a term called redlining. There's a new term called blue lining now. And what they're doing in our cities is really calculated. And this term blue lining means they're going to come into our cities and they're going to take away our local control. They're going to create policies that make it harder and harder for us to have local control over our roads, which we've seen here, over our abandoned buildings, and then also of our open spaces. So this blue lining is a red state that works hard to make sure that a blue city can't get ahead. So when we think about moving policies forward, we need to think about how we can stop the policies that are in place right now and the train that's running down the track. We have very wealthy people that are in charge of our government that we need to stop, and we need to start coming up with better policies that prevent blue lining in these cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mohammed?
So there's two bills that I want to support and I would plan to co-sponsor if elected. The End Hedge Fund, I always mess up this bill, End Hedge Fund Control of American Homes Act. So what this bill would do is not only would it restrict purchases of single-family and multifamily homes from hedge funds and these large private equity firms, but what it would also do is incentivize and encourage them to sell off the homes that they own when they're buying up entire neighborhoods. So this is going to help us address the supply issue that's the fundamental reason of why the cost is so high. The next thing is the Housing Supply and Affordability Act. What this would do is invest to increase the supply of homes. The second thing it would do is incentivize zoning reform with municipalities. And the third thing that it would do is it would fund specifically affordable or social housing development throughout our nation, especially in this community.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson?
In Salt Lake, I appreciate the fellow saying that he was from the West Side. I'm a big fan of the West Side and doing land development over there. What we had found is in the Northwest quadrant, when we attempted to do development there, near an elementary school, single-family homes, is that their general plan had not been updated for over 30 years. And so how do you meet today's housing needs with a general plan that has not been updated for over 30 years? So we put this, so a project has to go on hold. If we have staff who delays us based on a code or interpretation, we currently have an appeal in front of the fire board, and this issue has been going on for a year. It has delayed dozens of homes, and so we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars a month in delays. Those types of costs have to be passed on, unfortunately, to the buyer. So we really do need to make sure our general plans are in place, our staff's interpreting code, and that we can expedite these developments.
Thank you. Candidate Farrell?
To make housing more affordable for families and first-time home buyers in CD1, I will support legislation massively increasing federal funding for housing development, convert the home mortgage interest deduction to a tax credit, create a renter's tax credit so that people can save up to buy a house while they're renting instead of just throwing money away to a landlord. They can actually get some money back. I would ban, not just limit, corporate ownership and large investor ownership of single-family homes. Corporations aren't people. Why are they buying single-family homes? Who is living there? And I would increase funding for federal down payment assistance programs. So like doctors, for example, in some areas, they'll get 0% down loans. Like that's not something that's accessible to most people. I'm an attorney at my firm. I got a 9% down and a 3% interest loan. That's amazing. That's not accessible to other people. The system is rigged to favor people who can already afford it, who don't need a handout. So I'm gonna increase funding for that and spread it out to everybody to help everyone buy a home.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez?
Sorry, each time I'm going to have to turn it on, it seems. No, I think the biggest thing that we can talk about today is just realizing, again, the average medium income is not enough to afford a home. And as long as we continue to rely on interest rates, on having accessibility to a down payment or not, we're never going to meet this crisis. And what we need to do is not just increase supply, but we need to increase the tools in which we offer to folks, especially those households that have the average medium income of $150,000 or less. You qualify for low-income housing tax credits, but you don't qualify for a loan to purchase your own home. And so again, I'm a big fan of land trust. We're seeing this in Moab, but I also am a big fan of increasing density. I believe in Salt Lake City, it's a great example where people should have access to condominiums. They also should have access to purchase single-family homes and have intergenerational housing. Not every community has the same scenario in terms of housing, and so I'd love to see that expanded. But again, I've talked about the different bills in Congress. The most important thing is making sure that you have money in your bank account to be able to access housing and provide it for those that you call family and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Blumen?
Thank you. In the last answer, I talked about the influence of corporate interest in our housing supply. Now I think we need to, for this question, focus on what the federal government can do. First of all, we need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment, which is some nerdy stuff about restricting the supply of federally funded public housing. We haven't seen that able to be expanded in decades, so we need to work on that to get more affordable housing on the market from the government itself, because we need to be helping out. We also need to expand low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC, to make sure that we can get additional units on using private sector capital as well. And then finally, we need to incentivize condos. This is a sector of the housing space that has been ignored for a long time. People are having a really difficult time building condos. These are a good way for young families to get into a more affordable home than a traditional larger lot in the state with the largest average square footage of a home in the country.
Thank you. And last, candidate Villarreal?
My frustration with tax credits and subsidies is fundamentally it does not change the system that has caused this issue. We can try to throw Band-Aids onto things, but we need a baseline for how much does a home cost, and it needs to stay there. Which is why I push so heavily for the federal government building homes, not with a public-private partnership, so that nobody extra is pulling out profits out of that. No profits, sell the home for what it costs, and this forces the market to understand, hey, this is a baseline for what it costs to build a house, and this is what it's going to cost from here forward. If we don't do something drastic like this, the same thing will continue to happen over and over. We'll create one subsidy, and I don't disagree. I think we do need to get rid of corporate landlording and hedge funds buying out homes, but that doesn't fundamentally fix the issue. Currently, homes are viewed as equity and some form of wealth generation, investment. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. And that just fundamentally needs to change.
Thank you. So question number 3. The wage gap is not abstract. Utah's minimum wage remains at the federal floor of $7.25. 57% of the segment earns under $49,000 a year. So the question is, do you support raising the federal minimum wage? If not, what is your alternative for workers who are employed full-time and still cannot meet basic needs? We're going to start with candidate Robinson.
I do not support raising the minimum wage, and I know there's some controversy around that. This issue has been talked about for many years. The minimum wage is to basically prevent taking advantage of entry-level workers while incentivizing the employer to create more jobs. We now have Gen Z in a real predicament, because they're looking at, as we've discussed, rising housing, groceries, transportation. And so what I would look at is saying, do we need to look at other alternatives? For example, education-wise, we are seeing people graduating with enormous school debt. Are those careers still viable? Do we need to be having discussions on internships, mentoring, and how do we get these wages up so that we do not need to look at the minimum wage?
Thank you. Candidate Blumen?
Thank you. Yes, I support raising the minimum wage. I ran legislation this session to increase the minimum wage in Utah to $20 an hour, index it to inflation, because we can't keep going decades without seeing that increase. Utah has a $7.25 minimum wage. That's the federal minimum wage. So this is a critical issue for Utah. During his time in Congress, Ben McAdams voted against raising the minimum wage. So there's a very clear distinction we need to draw here. This is what we need to do for our communities. This is what we need to do for people working tough jobs and long hours who feel like they are never going to get ahead. And we can't just keep letting employers make these decisions. This is something we have to step into as a state, and we have to raise the bar here in Utah. So I think it is so important that we keep talking about this. One job should be enough for folks to get by. You shouldn't have to be breaking your back just to make ends meet.
Thank you, Candidate Reeby.
Thank you so much. So I do agree that we should be raising the minimum wage. I'm a 25-year union worker. I'm a member of UEA, and I'm also a member of AFT. And I'm a union member because I believe that everybody should have a living wage. I'm also a union member because when you think about how they are automating our jobs, they are not increasing our pay. So when you go to the grocery store and you have somebody bagging your bags and sitting at the grocery store, that person's making a certain amount of money. But then you go buy your own groceries and you put them in your own bag and you check yourself out. Did that person checking them out get a raise because they automated our jobs? No. So when we think about how we're going to make sure that everybody has a living wage, as we automate, as we make life easier, we should be increasing the amount of money those people are getting paid. So I do believe that the minimum wage should be increased. And I do believe that if you work at 40 hours, you should be able to support yourself with that 40-hour wage. So as a union worker, as a person who believes in equal pay for equal jobs, I think that's something that's paramount in our life right now. And you should be able to raise a family and feel secure with that living wage as well.
Thank you, Candidate Farrell.
Yes, absolutely. I support raising the minimum wage. I will sponsor legislation raising it to $20 an hour and next to inflation as well. I also sponsor legislation getting rid of the sub-minimum wage for tip workers so that restaurant owners and bar owners can't take advantage of that loophole. Every job should pay a living wage. The federal government sets poverty guidelines. The poverty guideline in 2026 is $15,600. You work 40 hours a week at minimum wage, you make $15,000. So they're saying if you work minimum wage, you are below the poverty line. The federal government has already decided that that is not enough money to live. That's unacceptable. The tipped minimum wage is $2.13, and it hasn't changed since 1991. The iPhone and the internet didn't exist. We were still looking on the halcyon days of Bill Clinton becoming president the last time the minimum wage, the sub-minimum tip wage was raised. Yeah, absolutely, it needs to be changed. We're seeing corporations and companies have record profits, and what are they doing with that? They're not putting it back into Americans. They're not putting it back into their employees. They're giving stock buybacks to their investors, and they're buying islands to fly down there with their pedophile friends. We need to raise the minimum wage and take money back from the wealthy elite.
Thank you. Candidate McAdams.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard yes. I support raising the minimum wage. Senator Bluen mentioned my vote when I was in Congress before. Let me tell you the real story. I voted against that bill because I was working on legislation to create a regional minimum wage, a minimum wage where we don't, the minimum wage in New York City is different than what a minimum wage should be in Utah. Everybody working full-time should be able to pay the basics and support their family. But that's going to be different in New York than it is in Utah. Senator Bluen mentioned that he introduced legislation. It didn't pass, right? In fact, Senator Bluen's been in the state Senate for 4 years and never passed legislation. Legislation that's introduced and never passes has never made somebody's life better. If we're going to raise the minimum wage and make people's lives better, we have to be working on legislation that can get across the finish line. And that's what I was trying to accomplish in Congress with a regional minimum wage bill, to make sure that we're not just pitting one state against another so nothing gets done, but that we can actually make real progress for real families so they can have afford the basics.
Thank you. Candidate Villarreal.
Hello, testing. Let's please stick to the question and answer to how this is going to affect Gen Z lives. If we cannot have candidates talking amongst each other, that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you.
The boys are fighting. I think it's really obvious that we have to raise federal minimum wage. I mean, something Robinson said, with inflation, paying anybody $7.25 to work even a single hour is labor abuse. Like, are we kidding here? Like 1 hour of some person's late work of any kind. I don't care if you're filling tires, right? $7.25 is not enough. We need serious legislation that's going to push for a minimum wage that ties itself to the inflation of $1. While different regions may have different costs of living, that doesn't necessarily change the worth of $1 across the entire United States. We've got entire systems of money trading globally to tell us how much the dollar costs. And so we should make sure that if we set a minimum wage, and that minimum wage is currently enough to raise a family, buy a home, and live, that should be sustained during inflation.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez.
Thank you. This is why we need more women in Congress, actually, because we get shit done. And so I appreciate Senator Reeby being up here with me. I think that's really important. When we talk about raising the minimum wage, I believe in states' rights, which means recognizing that each minimum wage across a region, across a county is going to be different. So in Salt Lake County, it'd actually be $27. It's not $20. And so I think the most important thing we need to recognize is our labor is how we control our power in our workforce, and making sure that we also we raise the minimum wage, but we have overtime pay, that we have good benefits and compensation so that people don't have to spend so much time worrying about the bills or their health care or the wages they're gonna earn. And also, I would introduce a child savings account. I believe that our children should start with their best foot forward and have equity on the line from day one. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Candidate Mohammed.
Look, there's a world where somebody can be a progressive and simultaneously be productive. Ben McAdams right here is saying that he supports raising the minimum wage, but he was also the person that killed the bill. And even if his proposal about making it based on the specific regions is sound, he still is the one that did not vote for the bill that made a step forward. And that is the exact same thing that Nate Bluen has done here time and time again, and the reason why he's never passed a bill in the history of his entire tenure in Utah. He's the most ineffective person that served in the state legislature since Utah is existed.
Stick to the
0
question,
bills.
please.
Next thing, what I'll do, pass a bill to support increasing the minimum wage, whether it's $20, $25, whatever it may be, at a minimum of $20. The next thing I want to do, support worker to executive pay ratios. We need to create a fundamental structure that incentivizes the increasing of wages for these employees by their employers. And as long as the employers are able to increase their wages without simultaneously doing for their employees, they're incentivized to exploit. We need to end the incentivization of exploitation, and nobody should be paid as an executive 2,000x their employee. Let's do something sound.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Y'all are gonna have an actual debate, okay? So when you have the debate, y'all can talk amongst each other, but please stick to the question, and please speak to how these policies will affect Gen Z.
Yes, please keep them relevant. Awesome. So question number 4, the insurance gap. Gen Z is disproportionately self-employed, gig-employed, or working part-time, the categories least likely to receive employer-sponsored health coverage. So the question is, what is your position on healthcare coverage for self-employed workers, gig workers, and people between jobs? Should coverage be decoupled from employment? This time I'm going to start with candidate Lopez.
I'll figure this out one day. Listen, if you've ever had gaps in work, you know that you have to pay for COBRA coverage. So it's on you to pay for it. It's basically where healthcare comes in. You can have it at a premium cost. That, to me, is an example of why we have so many issues in our country, why we have so many debts. And the most important thing is recognizing that we need gap coverage in it, which is why I would introduce healthcare for all. I really think that this is the only way to persevere, the only way to make sure that insurance is covered, and that people don't have to worry about it and can then instead go find new skills, maybe become an apprentice, go start a business, help your family. There's so many ways to use our time and our labor, and worrying about your healthcare should not be something at the expense of our workers.
Thank you, candidate Villarreal.
Look, I grew up in like the westernmost part of West Valley. The next neighborhood over is Magna. I went to school at Cypress. The old torn down, the old if you guys know about Cypress, you know the old one versus the new one. Look, most of my friends, coming out of high school when they went out onto their own, a lot of them, even during childhood, didn't have health care. They just didn't. So that means they got sick, they had issues, they just wouldn't go to the doctor. That's fundamentally problematic if we want to nation build. If we want our country to be good, we fundamentally have to make sure that we're taking care of people. A single-payer universal health care system is the only way that we can fundamentally make sure that every single person has health care covered. It also will break apart a lot of these systems that drive so much profit into administrative bloat, into pharmaceuticals, into a machine that is meant to take money from us and put it in the pockets of those who are in charge of the machine. So, universal health care.
Thank you, candidate Mohammed.
We spend more money on healthcare than any nation on earth, yet we are the only wealthy nation that does not guarantee health coverage. Compared to some of our peers, we actually spend double per pupil, double per capita. So how is it that we spend the most money, but we have 27 million adults, 4 million children without health coverage, 300,000 right here in the state of Utah? With a single-payer system such as Medicare for All, we can provide full coverage for every single person while increasing care, the quality of care. And most importantly, it'll actually cost us less overall. So if we can do all of these things and at the same time save money, why is it not happening? Well, I'll tell you why it's not happening. Because there's 3 court cases that set a precedent for unlimited spending in our politics. And these corporations, these private insurance companies are blowing up these campaigns with funds. Somebody on this panel here today is taking money from those private insurance companies. And that one person is also the one person that doesn't want healthcare for every single one of us while simultaneously lowering costs. So that's the answer.
Thank you, candidate Robinson.
Americans are spending over $5 trillion a year on health care. The medical expenses are also one of the leading causes of bankruptcy. It's interesting to see the Gen Z, where a lot of them are becoming self-employed contract laborers, entities. I have been self-employed my entire life. I have never been one that says I have insurance from A to Z. There are oftentimes where I will pay dental, medical out of pocket because it's cheaper than having insurance. I also have within a fairly short window of months, I had a dear friend who was involved in a car accident and broke his back and his femur. I had another one that had open heart surgery. I have a dear friend who had a double mastectomy. These are the types of things that will destroy people financially, and we have to find a way for insurance to travel with people.
Thank you, candidate Reeby.
Thank you. I agree with everything that's been said. But, as a female, let me tell you what is not working for insurance. Women aren't getting the same benefits as men for insurance. We have different needs. We have different lifestyles. We have whole different sets of problems that is totally under-researched and under-cared about. I know that you're all Gen Zs, but I've been there. I was a dump truck driver, a wildland firefighter, a rugby player, and everything I did was around my insurance. Every move I made, everywhere I went, was involved around insurance. To this day, right now, when I decide where I want to go, it's around insurance. It's around insuring my husband and my kids. So this is not new. But Obamacare has been something better, the Affordable Care Act. Moving to a single-payer system is awesome, but we've been there. We need to do better, and CHIP needs to be expanded, Medicaid needs to be expanded, and Medicare needs to be expanded so that everybody can get the health care they needed. And it should be more focused on the needs of the population, not just half the population.
Thank you, candidate Bluen.
Thank you. Yeah, I've struggled with 5-figure medical debt before. I've had these injuries and had to have that weighing over my head, and I know that so many people are feeling that right now. I'm a full supporter of Medicare for All. That is why Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal have endorsed my campaign, because they know I'm ready to work with them to get things done in Congress in a very different environment than we have here in Utah. People should not be tied to a job that they hate because of their health care. Allowing people to move around to different jobs because they know they're going to get that coverage all the time is so important. It's good for our economy. It is good for our families, and it takes such a weight off of people. So we need to ensure that everyone has the right to access health care, that they can get the care they need, that we expand the options for people in our communities, and that is something I'm going to fight for in Congress.
Thank you, Candidate McAdams.
Thank you. So the home that I grew up in, we knew a lot of financial insecurity growing up. My mom raised 6 kids, mostly on her own. I remember times as a kid that the power was shut off because we couldn't afford to pay the bills. Our home was in foreclosure. My mother had a chronic medical condition that she almost died a couple of times when we were kids. My sister was a type 1 diabetic that we discovered when she went into a coma at age 4. So we lived in fear of losing our health care coverage. Now, fortunately, my mother was a school teacher and represented by the UEA, and we had great health care, and we relied on that. But we never had, and look, my mom she was a great teacher, and she loved her job. She never wanted to change. But if she wanted to change, that was not an option for us. So a system that requires health care as the driver of your profession, that system is broken. It definitely needs to change. I will tell you, it's not going to change tomorrow. So it's the system that we kind of inherited after some accidents after World War II. But if we're going to change it, we need to do a couple of things. We need to have a strong public option that people can choose healthcare elsewhere. And we need to continue the healthcare subsidies so people can buy affordable healthcare on the exchange. And Chuck Schumer was wrong to not continue the government shutdown in order to force the subsidies to go forward.
Thank you. And lastly, Candidate Farrell.
Yeah, healthcare coverage should absolutely be decoupled from employment. I support universal healthcare. We should have learned that lesson after we went through COVID and a bunch of businesses shut down. It's insane that we didn't get there, but the reason we didn't get there is because most members of Congress would rather make a quick buck than help fellow Americans. Look, we're paying an incredible amount of money for health coverage, and we have terrible outcomes. Passing universal health care would be a massive tax cut for businesses as well, because businesses shoulder a huge burden of providing insurance to their employees. So we would actually save a lot of money. That's boring. That's all. Yeah, we all agree. Universal. Well, not all of us, but most of us agree universal health care. That's great. It's incredibly deeply personal to me. The reason I'm up on the stage is because our healthcare system is a dystopian hellscape. In 2009, my mother was a waitress. She got sick, and so what did her employer do? They fired her. She spent 5 days in the hospital. We left with a $150,000 hospital bill that she only escaped medical bankruptcy because she died months later, and they settled for $40. That's obviously a system where those people need to be jailed at the very least. We need universal health care. We need it now. We don't need excuses.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We're going to move on to question number 5.
If you have access to the air conditioning, can you crank that up, please? If anybody has access to that, that's healthcare.
Also, if anyone in the audience, if y'all like what you hear, feel free to snap, clap. We would love to have y'all interacting with our candidates.
Yes.
Yes, I've been hearing you holding it down over there.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, question number 5. Mental health is healthcare. Young voters in Congressional District 1 told us mental health care is difficult to access and often too expensive, even for those with insurance. Utah faces high rates of youth anxiety, depression, and teen suicide. What specific policies or actions would you support to improve mental health for young people? Be specific. We're going to start with candidate Villarreal.
If universal health care is implemented, it needs to be expansive. It needs to cover every single thing that a person needs from the moment that they're born to the moment of their death. What I would like to see is mental health access in abundance inside of schools, all the way from elementary through high school. If our children always had immediate access to mental health providers, and not just a school counselor, genuine medical professionals within schools, not only does this create more jobs in actual healthcare fields, but this provides an opportunity for children as young as 2, 3, 4, 5. As soon as they get into school in pre-K, we can get medical trained professionals on psychology and the human brain looking at these people to help people develop into stronger and more capable human beings. Mental health is ruining us, and it's especially obvious with Gen Z. This has to change.
Thank you, candidate Mohammed.
So the Medicare for All proposals that many of us are mentioning here today, I want to clarify that it's not just your typical Medicare. it's a Medicare that's expanded to cover dental, to cover vision, to cover matters like this. So this would, again, provide full coverage for every single person while increasing the quality of care, because the competition now is no longer on price. The competition is in, if a doctor wants to get that patient, they have to be the best doctor out there, because they don't have a captive network market. The only one market is the United States of America. And we're gonna go to the best provider that we could possibly find. And doctors are gonna do the best that they can do. And after that, it costs less money. We don't need simply just another public option and paying more taxes for less care. What we need is a solution, and this solution goes across the board, including our mental health.
Thank you, Candidate McAdams.
Yeah, thank you. Again, strongly worded tweets have never made anybody's life better, but expanding access to mental health care is critical. And that's something that I have experience working on. First of all, we have the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, instituted what's called mental health parity. It required physical health care and mental health care to be covered by insurance. Now that, as we know, lobbyists are always good at finding their way through the loopholes in that, so that has not been fully recognized to its full potential. But what it has done is it's expanded access to mental health care, and it's also brought it into the mainstream that it's okay to talk about mental health care. That used to be stigmatized. Today, it is not a stigma to say, I talked to my therapist, and I'm working with my therapist on this or that. I'm proud that when I was mayor of Salt Lake County and we saw a wait list of a year long for people to get access to mental and behavioral health care, that was unacceptable. I led the charge to expand Medicaid access in Utah to eliminate that wait list. So we took it from a year to immediate access. And then that has led to full Medicaid expansion in the state of Utah, and it's made a real difference in people's lives.
Thank you. Candidate Chavez?
Lopez Chavez.
Lopez Chavez.
We keep switching it for some reason, so thanks.
Apologies.
That's okay. No, I want to recognize, like, mental health care is health care, full stop, right? And this is something that I'm really glad that we're reintroducing into our communities. And I actually really concur with what Luis said. I also want to expand telehealth funding. I think that the faster that we can meet our clients and our individuals in crisis and in need, and also to treat it as preventative care. This is something that should be consolidated just like as your general checkup. And making sure that mental health care is always in our primary care settings, but specifically in K through 12. Making sure that we have a generation that has access to mental health care systems is critical to ensuring that we have a good system in place that's raising community members to care for each other and to take collective action and urgency when we find ourselves in crisis. And finally, I just want to expand this as FMLA. No worker in crisis should ever be disparaged or embarrassed or have their workforce taken away from them because of the crisis they find themselves in. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson?
I thought it was interesting when they were talking about the survey and the numbers, the percentage of Gen Zers that said they don't feel like their voice matters. I received a call yesterday from a voter, and he said, my kids that are in college have checked out. They don't feel like anybody's listening. I had an individual contact me, and she owned a condo. And she said, you know, I'd worked so hard to get my house. And she said, I realized that my HOA terminated my auto pay, and I didn't realize until months into it. And she said, by then I was in collections. By then they were suing me. And she was facing a judgment that totaled her entire annual income. We were able to get that down to half, but because of this policy, because of not being listened to, because of having no way to resolve this, she checked herself into the Huntsman's mental hospital for 2 weeks. And so when you have bad policy and when you have individuals and voters and residents that are not being heard, that can definitely lead to poor mental health, and we need to do much better.
Thank you. Candidate Bluen?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about stigma here. I've struggled with mental health myself. It is something that so many young people are feeling. The onslaught of artificial intelligence and social media and all those things really are driving a crisis here. And we should be talking about it. We should destigmatize because it is something that weighs so heavily. We already talked about Medicare for All. As Laban said, That would include mental health parity. We also need to expand the supply of providers. We need to get people into training systems, into our universities who can actually provide this care, because if we just have the coverage, but we don't have the actual providers, we're never going to make a dent in the problem. I think telehealth is another great solution there, and we certainly need to keep addressing this and keep talking about it. I think that is so important that we keep talking about this issue, which will have a good effect on the mental health of young people from the beginning.
Thank you, candidate Farrell.
Guys, I swear I wrote all these down before everyone else talked. It's going to sound like ditto. Yeah, Medicare for all, it would include mental health coverage. It's creepy and weird that we need to get dental insurance and vision insurance, and like it's part of your body. Like it's not a luxury. I have teeth. I would like my medical insurance to cover it. So mental health insurance, that'll be fully covered under a Medicare for all system. I would massively increase federal funding into mental health services, not just in K through 12, but in college and grad school. I'm an attorney. There is a large contingent of attorneys who struggle with mental health. Woe is us. Nobody likes attorneys. But law students, at least, and college students, pandering to the crowd, need mental health services. Putting more money into mental health counselors would be incredibly valuable. And then expanding mental health workforce pipeline through training programs and loan forgiveness, I think would be really valuable. You can incentivize more people to go into those careers without going massively into debt. And then telehealth infrastructure, building that out, not just for like convenience, but also for people who live in more rural areas where they'd have to drive an hour to see a provider, so the provider can see them for like 5 minutes and then write them a prescription. So yes, support all of those things.
Thank you. And lastly, candidate Reby.
Thank you. I can also say ditto, so I'm going to come at it with a different point of view. I mean, so many of us have been touched by addiction and suicide. And so how do you take that national lens and put a personal lens to it and make sure you're proactively helping your family and your friends? So Utah has Safe UT app, which is an incredible app that's worked. People across the nation have used it. We have 988, which is incredible. But 10 years ago, I was a teacher on the school board, and I was like, we need to have internet access, robust internet access across the country and the state. So we were ready when COVID happened, and we were ready to turn that switch on and provide all these resources online. So proactively thinking about what can I do to help somebody before it happens is what we need to start thinking about. Internet across the nation, the state was something that I was thinking about. Also, we have addiction issues that cause us to have more mental health issues. We can't just look at the outcome, we have to look at the problems that are starting these things from the beginning. Thinking about our schools and how we can take care of our kids all day long is really important. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We're going to move on to question number 6. The Great Salt Lake is not optional. What is your specific position on the Great Salt Lake? Water rights, agricultural use, and federal coordination with Utah's state legislature. What would you do in Congress that has not been done? We're going to start with candidate Farrell.
Yeah, thank you. I assume everybody in here heard or read the article talking about we are sitting on a nuclear bomb when the Great Salt Lake dries out and all those heavy metals, we're just breathing them in. Our air quality is garbage already, so we need desperately to fix this so that the city can continue to exist. There are a lot of things we can do at the federal level that haven't been tried. I would allow conserved water to be legally protected and banked instead of forfeited. We kind of have a use or lose it system in Utah, which incentivizes people to just burn through it as opposed to saving it. I would tie certain federal water or infrastructure funds to measurable conservation outcomes. If the Utah state legislature is going to be getting money, they have to meet certain criteria. I'd expand leasing markets so water can temporarily flow to the lake without permanent loss of water rights. I'm going to skip. I would compensate farmers for temporary fallowing or crop switching, and I would support markets for less water-intensive crops. For example, alfalfa. Probably don't need that as heavy. But yeah, it's a desperate issue, and it's going to destroy our city if we don't fix it.
Thank you, candidate Blowen.
Thank you. Yeah, this is absolutely a federal problem. We need federal solutions. We need the will to act because the state has said a lot of nice things and done some good stuff, but we haven't done anywhere near enough what we need to. I have worked on legislation. I proposed legislation last year that then passed when we handed it off to someone else this year. There are other ways to get things done that are being said on this stage. We need to focus on all of these problems, on alfalfa in particular, to make sure that we address the agriculture situation. That's 75% in agriculture contributing to this issue. So we need billions of dollars in federal funding. That's what I'm going to go out and find. We need to make sure that we have the regulations in place to get that water to Great Salt Lake. We need to protect the Endangered Species Act. We need to work on our water policy generally to allow for conserved water to reach the Great Salt Lake, and to purchase up leases and make sure that we can work with our agricultural folks as well to bring them into the fold, but provide those sticks, those regulations that are needed to actually get the water to Great Salt Lake and move beyond just incentives.
Thank you, candidate Mohammed.
The Great Salt Lake drying up is not only an environmental crisis, but it's also a public health crisis, and something that is actually understood in a bipartisan manner, yet nothing is being done because of our state government. So the federal government needs to step in, and I'm confident, whether it's myself or anybody else on this stage, that we will do what it takes to fight for us and make sure we address this issue. My proposal for this is something a little bit more extreme. I want a mandate from the federal government for minimum lake levels. What this will do is it will not only incentivize us to innovate how we are solving this crisis on the state level, on the public side, but it will also increase the amount of funding that we can do. We need to seek a massive appropriation from the federal government for this, and also work with the state government. The next thing that we need to do is we need to buy back water rights from these abusers of these water rights. This is the agricultural industry and industrial industries out there. We need to come up with real reforms of how they're using this water. So a lot of them are using a lot more water than they even need for what they're doing. So we need to make sure that there's conservation measures that are in place, so they're doing things that are actually responsible. And the last thing we want to do is make sure that we ban data center development in water distressed areas, which would include where the Great Salt Lake is, and make sure that the land where this is, it just makes sense.
Thank you. Candidate Villarreal.
I'm actually glad somebody else said it. Thank you, Liban. I think it's really important that we just federally restrict how much water gets taken from the Great Salt Lake. It's absolutely necessary that we protect our environment and maintain a certain level, right? Your business should just not be able to function if it's at the cost of destroying the Great Salt Lake. I think agriculture is important. I think growing things and sustaining ability to feed our people is important, but also we live in a world with global and international and even just within the United States trade, right? So your business should not come at the cost of destroying the Great Salt Lake, whether that's agriculture, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's all sorts of stuff being used. I mean, data centers are going to be taking up a bunch of water here soon, so we got to make sure that we protect that, not just with the Great Salt Lake, but with all natural resources.
Thank you, candidate McAdams.
Yeah, thank you. Well, one thing you hear we all agree on is that this is an existential crisis for Utah. And future generations are going to be picking up the tab. We've seen people running up the cost, industry, developers, agricultural uses have been running up the tab for years, and then we're going to have to pay the price. So we've got to do something about it. The challenge with the Great Salt Lake is there's not an easy fix. There's not one bill that we can pass or something we can do. When I was in the state Senate, I would pass 15 to 20 bills per year. I did that by building coalitions. Now this was something hard to do. We passed things like LGBTQ employment and housing non-discrimination protections. In a red state, in Utah, in 2012, we got that passed. I led that charge for many years as a state senator. We expanded Medicaid to bring treatment to people with addiction and people who are homeless. I did that by building coalitions. I did that with a Republican council in Utah. To address the Great Salt Lake, we need our strongest players on the field who can work to build coalitions. Now, you may have seen Donald Trump tweeted a few weeks ago that he wanted to do something to help save the Great Salt Lake. Let me tell you, when I was in Congress, I voted to impeach Donald Trump, knowing it could cost me my election. But if Donald Trump wants to save the Great Salt Lake, I will even work.
Thank you.
Look, Zoran Mamdani can work with Donald Trump.
We should move on. Thank you. Candidate Reeby?
Thank you. All these things I agree with, but the other thing about this is I'm a Farm Bureau Association member. I recognize that we have issues with this state where there's an rural-urban divide where we fight back and forth. So as a Farm Bureau member, I went up to Logan, I saw those farms. If we're going to start thinking about the Great Salt Lake, we need to pay for people to get better watering practices. It needs to be more efficient, it needs to be more environmentally friendly, and it needs to be paid for by us because we need our farms. We need our farms to have great climate in this area. We can't just keep paving over our farms. The other thing is I'm a rural caucus champion. I go to the rural caucus every Friday during session, every time, so that I can hear what their issues are. And lastly, I'm sick and tired of this state not owning their problems. And I'm sick and tired of every state not owning their problems because the deficit is out of control and we are the greatest run state in the nation. We have more money, we have a higher budget, and where do we spend it? On museums and prisons instead of saving the Great Salt Lake. We have the ability to fix it and we chose not to, and we all need to stop kicking the can down the road.
Thank you, Candidate Robinson.
Utah has not built a reservoir, a major reservoir, in over 30 years. We have Romney, the Josh Romney, that says, I'm going to raise $100 million and buy water rights and send it to the Great Salt Lake. You have the Ducks Unlimited that say, I'm going to do the same thing. Well, if you take those water rights off the market and send them directly to the Great Salt Lake, what does that do to the price of housing? Water rates go up, the price of housing goes up. So we actually need to have additional water sources. I caught a lot of heat over the last few years when I said our Wasatch Canyons, if we look at doing some tree thinning, we will actually create some additional water sources. There's now a study that came out of the state of Washington that says tree thinning will increase snowpack in those areas by 30%. You can actually create 12.5 acre feet per 100 acres by doing this. We need to create more water sources and it's available.
Thank you. And lastly, Candidate Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. Respectfully, brother, disagree. Completely disagree. The data also says our reservoirs are only 42% filled. We don't need more reservoirs, actually. We need to stop the diversion of water, pass the Colorado Compact, include not just the lower and upper basin states, include the Great Salt Lake as its own separate entity because it is a biome that is biodiverse and it deserves federal protections. That's what needs to happen. Now, as a council member, I can tell you Salt Lake City. That's not how water works. Yeah, it is actually, brother. I passed this. We have a set water level at Salt Lake City. We are the largest owner and steward of water in our state is actually Salt Lake City. And we help provide the Great Salt Lake water. We can't divert water away. We need to do it in a way that's sustainable and helping our farmers produce types of agriculture and products that is sustainable to use, but making sure that our water is making its way back to the Great Salt Lake. I also want to talk about mineral waste. We need to make sure that that sewage waste and mineral waste and toxicity is being fined. U.S. Magnesium, for example, is a great example of how we need to pay for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We're going to move to question number 7, and it's going to be on debt trap. So the education issue respondents skew toward people without degrees. 84% had a high school diploma or some college only. Their concern was the cost of credentials and fear of debt before they even start. So the question is, what would you do to make post-secondary education and vocational training accessible and affordable, not just for college students, but for the majority of young Utahns who never complete a degree? We're going to start with candidate Lopez Chavez.
Final question, and the mic's turned off, so here we go. The most important thing is recognizing that I think education should be free, and nothing is free because we pay for it, right? So making sure that we're subsidizing higher education, making sure that we are creating a pipeline of accessibility for apprenticeships, and recognizing our unions are part of that conversation. But again, I want to talk about how the majority of our skills and our labor right now is how we're going to uplift this next generation. I also want to make sure that we put a cap on federal student loans. It should be illegal, the cost to attend a higher education, to go receive vocational training. This is something that I want to expand in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go with candidate Farrell.
I'll co-sponsor the College for All Act, which would make public colleges, universities, and trade schools tuition free. And because I don't want to perfect to be the enemy of good. I will also sponsor legislation capping the interest rate on federal student loans at 0%. We shouldn't be paying money to our government for us to invest in ourselves. That's stupid. And then I will also impose regulations restricting tuition hikes, because what's going to happen if we don't do that? These schools are just going to pass the cost of, hey, you have an interest-free loan now. How's another $10,000 sound to you for 1 year of school? I attended public school and public universities throughout my entire academic career, K through grad school. I was honored to have done it. I think it's important to invest in go-to public schools. I graduated with a massive amount of debt. I've been lucky enough to spend I paid it off in over a decade. What I could have done with that money, I could have started a business. Like, we're throwing money away so that people can get an education and build a career, and then it takes them a decade of their lives to get there. We obviously need to change that. We need to make school tuition free.
Thank you, candidate Reby.
Thank you. As an educator for my whole life, I look at vocational training as a union job. You can go join the union right now, and they will pay you to learn how to be a plumber, an electrician, a heavy machine operator. Join a union. I think about education, and when we look at what's happening in our schools, like the University of Utah, we have these massive sports teams that have NIL agreements. This is driving up our tuition. I think education should be education. That's a problem. So as an educator, I think that there should be more access. We also had something here in the state called occupational optimization. I'm a teacher. I'm not making $1 million, but my job is valuable. Our mottos in this world should not be ego over service. It should be service over ego. It shouldn't be greed over community. It should be community over greed. But that's not what's happening. So when we're going to start looking at our communities, we should be honoring those people that show up every day and work hard to have a living. So when we start education, there should be honor in a job that pays the wage and teaches kids.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson.
When we went to dinner last night, a fellow that I hadn't seen for some time, he graduated from college about 3 years ago. And he said that AI basically wiped out his, what he was trained for. And he said, but he's still left with debt. And really quite concerned about it. And I think we're going to see more of that. When I attended college my first year or two, I decided that wasn't for me. And I opted to do apprenticeships and internships. I moved out of state. I went and I found the best people in the industry. I told them I would work for them if they would train me, house me, feed me, but I would basically work for free. I was able to learn from some of the very best in the country. And I was able to finish up with no debt. I have never had anybody that wanted to work with me, that wanted to do projects with me, that said, oh, I need to see a certificate. I need to see your degree. And I agree with Ms. Reby on what she was talking about as far as the training and diversifying as far as our careers, and I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Muhammad.
Education to me is a human right, and your economic class should not be the contingent factor of whether you're able to pursue that. And the reason fundamentally why we're not able to access education for everybody and cost not being a factor is not because we're not the wealthiest nation in the entire world in history, but because we prioritize our spending in the wrong ways. Trump administration just recently asked for $200 billion for a war with an objective that none of us in this room can answer. You know what that $200 billion can fund? Tuition-free public schools, community colleges, public colleges, trade schools, $58 billion a year. Universal pre-K, $35 billion a year. Paid family and medical leave, $20 billion a year. Fully fund public transit, $7 billion a year. This is how I want to lead. This is what I am focused on. Investing in the ordinary people, not investing in the war machine, not investing in corporate greed and subsidizing all these things that are not necessary. Education is the simplest thing that we should be thinking about. Education is not only something that you would all access as human beings, but it's our greatest economic development engine.
Thank you. Candidate Blumen?
Well said. That's a great answer. Like candidate Robinson said, college is not for everyone. I failed out of school the first time around, and I ended up back here at Salt Lake Community College. I love this place. This is the right example for us to move forward. We need free public college, 2-year, 4-year, and we need to expand apprenticeships and trade programs for everyone in our communities who wants to go that route instead of a traditional education. I am the only candidate on the stage endorsed by several labor unions or any labor unions, and they know that I'm going to go to DC and fight for their workforces to make sure that we have good jobs in our communities that come out of the diverse education pathways that we have. So we need to hold bad institutions accountable. I think the idea of capping student loan debt at 0%, I think I have like 6.5% interest on my loans. That's a great idea too.
Thank you. Candidate Villarreal.
Look, I grew up around a lot of people who never even thought college was an option. I grew up around a lot of people who couldn't afford trade schools. I grew up around people who did not see a future. My frustrations with the world right now are that there is not a robust job market in the United States. Right now you see a lot of folks in like the same 7 jobs, call center or, this, that, or the other. Fundamentally speaking, we have to expand these things. I mean, there are countries beating us like China in green energy manufacturing. You know how much we could invest into green energy manufacturing, create so many jobs in engineering and tooling creation, how many union jobs will get created by that. We could be focusing on creating so many more venues for education to function for people, and that has to start with some sort of access to it. So I'm in favor of supporting free health, paid for education for the first 4 years of college, and even more if people can prove their worth.
Thank you. And lastly, candidate McAdams.
Yeah, thank you. Growing up the son of a public school teacher, my mom would always tell me that college education is the toll booth on the highway to success. And that's not cheap. At the time, I worked 2 and 3 jobs. I sold plasma. I really had to be scrappy in order to, and I got Pell Grants, and I still have student loans that I had to take out to pay for my college education. But it worked out for me. I don't know that the same is true for my kids and for Gen Z. That toll booth has gotten so expensive that I'm not really sure the highway's working. And people are finding alternate ways to get there. So one of the things I've worked on in the last few years since leaving Congress is making Pell Grants available for vocational training. So maybe college isn't the credential that is going to lead you to success. Maybe we can use that same funding and access to grants to fund vocational training. I've also been working to advance competency-based education. This is, a degree shouldn't just be how much time did you spend sitting in a chair from 9 a.m. to noon at a university, but skills that you learned in the real world, whether it's through nursing or other fields that you learn, and real-life skills that can come in. And are you competent?
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to question number 8. A personal priority. Some Gen Z respondents in Congressional District 1 described immigration policy as having a direct personal impact on their families, schools, and workplaces. What is your overall approach to immigration policy, and what role should Congress play in addressing immigration enforcement, legal pathways, and support for immigrant communities in districts like CD1? We're going to start with candidate Mohammed.
A little over 2 decades ago, ICE didn't exist, and we were doing perfectly fine. 2 decades from now, and currently when I'm in office in a year or so, we will not have ICE again because there's going to be elected leaders in the House from the Democratic side. They're going to fight to abolish ICE and create a legal pathway for our citizens, for our brothers and sisters who are undocumented immigrants here in Utah, across the nation, who are here to just work hard, provide for their families, educate themselves. These are our neighbors, and they came here for a reason. It's because they love the United States of America, and they know what the United States is capable of and what it can provide, and we should not prevent these people who are honestly the true patriots, who understand what it's like to be outside of the United States. So I'm going to be championing policies that create legal pathways for our DACA members, for our undocumented members, to be able to achieve that American dream and be treated with the dignity they deserve.
Thank you, candidate Robinson.
Immigration is obviously an electrifying issue for a lot of people. America is the land of opportunity. We have people that come here legally. We have had a lot of people that have come here illegally. I have a friend who wants to retire in Spain, and he goes there every 3 months. Well, he goes and he stays 3 months. He knows what their laws are. And I said, why do you not stay longer? And he said, I respect their laws. And unfortunately, the leaders, national leaders, local leaders, have allowed a lot of the laws to be broken. When I discuss with my immigrant friends, I say, what are your thoughts on immigration? And they said, we need a secure border. We need to know who is coming in this country. And if people are breaking the law, raping, murdering, drug trafficking, they need to be sent back. And so, there are a lot of issues with immigration. I know it touches a lot of lives, it touches mine, and there needs to be a better solution.
Thank you, candidate Villarreal.
The legal illegal thing is so bullshit because like our laws. Look, man. Look. Fundamentally speaking, the laws that we currently have do not allow for the travel from other countries here in an effective way in order to fill our job markets. So what we need to do is allow more work visas, allow more pathways to citizenship, because the more that you sit, the more that we as a country sit here with an immigration system that is just built off of not allowing people to come over and just It creates undocumented immigrants. It creates people coming over here because we have a system so broken. We have needs for workers, and workers come, and if they are able to unionize and work with citizen workers, all that does is it betters our society. It betters our workforce. It betters the rights of every single laborer in this country. And it frustrates me to no end that the issue is not our border, our security. It is the fact that we allow workers to come over here illegally. We create that problem by not creating options, not creating pathways.
Thank you. Candidate Reeby.
Thank you. I love what you just said. That's awesome. My grandfather was an immigrant, and we are built by immigrants. We are a great, diverse nation of immigrants. We have a broken system that has been used against us politically to other each other and have enemies that are not existent, and that's wrong. When I think about how many people are in this country working hard just to make ends meet, to send money back to their families, it's wrong that we don't have a path that lets people stay here and be successful. There's no reason somebody should be disappeared off the street. There's no reason somebody should be hidden in a detention center that they're going to build in the West Valley. That's wrong. But that we are not doing more to create a better system, and the one that's broken is what we have, is important. And when we think about how we had a bill that was ready, and politically they killed it because it wouldn't help their campaign, is criminal. And so I'm here to do the work to make sure that we have a system that works for everyone and is timely. Timely. You shouldn't have to wait generations to get here.
Thank you. Candidate McAdams.
Yeah, thank you. I think for probably everybody in this room, this issue is personal, whether you're an immigrant or not. You have friends, family who are immigrants. My teenage son, his two closest friends are immigrants from Latin America. And look, they are here legally. One of them is here on TPS status. He is not a criminal. He's not committing crimes. He is abiding by the law, and he's here under the laws of the United States. And we worry every day what's going to happen to that kid. And he lives in fear, and his family lives in fear that he might be separated from his family because of what's happening. We've seen ICE on the streets making our communities less safe and terrorizing American communities. It is wrong. So let me tell you quickly what I've done. As mayor of Salt Lake County, I helped to author the Utah Compact. I created the Office for New Americans, where we helped green card holders become U.S. citizens. We provided them access to legal services and other things. We became the first welcoming community. I voted for a legal pathway for citizenship for dreamers. Have you ever been to a naturalization ceremony? When I was mayor, I went as often as I could. And that's the place that I felt the most patriotic I've ever felt. I want to feel that way more often, not how I feel today.
Thank you. We're going to go with candidate Lopez Chavez.
Every time, guys. I'm just keeping you on your toes. This issue is super personal to me. I was born from a woman that was undocumented, and she crossed over here for survival. She came over here because she wanted her family to have opportunity. And I think about that because right now, people like my mother wouldn't have a regular pathway to citizenship unless you got sponsored by having $500,000, you married a US citizen, or you bought Trump's gold card now. Those are the only alternative paths. So when we hear people say, let's abolish ICE, let's not let the conversation end there. Let's qualify individuals and undocumented people that are here, that have served this country, that are on DACA or TPS. We should have qualified amnesty. We've done this before and we can do it again. But we also need to make sure that we have a real dignified pathway to citizenship and make sure that we protect it. We also need to stop targeting people of color and protect their data. That is what this administration wants. They want access to our voter records, and they're using immigrants as a scapegoat. We need to stop this now.
Thank you, candidate Blumen.
Thank you. Yeah, the Utah Compact is dead. Things are very different than they were 10 or so years ago. I was working with a family just yesterday whose kids got locked up when they showed up for an immigration hearing. They've been held up in Evanston, Wyoming for weeks now, without blankets, without access to good food, without access to see their families. This is the reality of what's happening. We do need to abolish ICE. That's not a slogan. We need to prosecute the folks who are accountable for this. We need to move beyond and create pathways to citizenship and to open up opportunities for refugees from conflicts like genocide in Gaza and around the world. This is so critical. These are people that have contributed to our communities, and we are demonizing our neighbors. We are seeing people dragged off the streets. It is ridiculous. And so it's not just a slogan. The propaganda we've seen come out of this agency and this administration is dehumanizing, and ICE and other agencies have lost their social license to operate.
Thank you. And lastly, candidate Farrell.
Yeah, I agree. We need to abolish ICE. We need to take that funding that's given to ICE and we need to put it into creating more immigration judges to expedite review of immigration cases. I spend about 200 hours a year doing pro bono immigration work. I have a client from Venezuela who he turned 18 recently and he was so excited to go to Miami with his friends, and I told him, absolutely not, because you will be arrested and he's from Venezuela, you will be deported. Like, we have an immigration system that is designed to hurt brown people. Like, I know you look at me and you're like, I bet he's from a family of illegal immigrants. I am. My grandfather, they snuck in through Canada. They were white Irish Catholics, they weren't Catholics, sorry. They were white Irish. They're fine. Like, it didn't affect them. He got naturalized later. Like, it's a system designed to hurt brown people. Like, I support comprehensive immigration reform. There is, like, I was born here. Who cares? That's a lottery. That's a lotto ticket. I didn't do anything. People who are, you're walking across Mexico to get here. That is the most patriotic thing ever. We should encourage people to do that. We should be fighting for more immigrants. Like, if you want to come here, come here.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We're going to move on to question number 9, a woman's issue. Every single respondent who named public safety and gun violence prevention as their top issue was a woman. Not a majority, 100%. This is not a statistical fluke. So the question is, what does this tell you about who bears the fear and cost of gun violence? And what is your specific position on federal gun safety legislation? We're going to go with candidate Reby.
Thank you. I find this alarming that this is a woman's issue. I mean, like, are you kidding me? This should be an every person issue. What is that even about? We are more worried about a well-armed militia than we are worried about a well-educated, vaccinated, well-fed, well-housed community. That's insanity to me. So when I think of this as being something we should do, I think about that video of the guy loading the musket and saying, this is when we came up with our gun laws that everybody should have a musket. We have AK-47s. They should be outlawed. I'm sorry. As a school teacher and a Utah senator, I have never been more afraid for my health than lately. I tell my kids not to stand by the windows certain days. How is it possible that I'm a senator and a school teacher and I don't feel safe in my life? That is crazy. We need to have background checks. We need to have common sense gun laws. And that's not a woman's issue. It's an every person issue. Your family should feel safe going to concerts, school, places of worship, to the store. That's insanity to me, and we need to do more.
Thank you, candidate Bluen.
That's a great answer, and we were trying to figure out how to go with that, and I appreciate you raising it that way. Senator Reeby and I have both we have run legislation in the Utah Senate that has gone nowhere because it's not going to happen here at the state level. These folks have been so oppositional to moving forward even the most reasonable common sense gun violence measures. So this is going to be something that has to happen in DC. This is a problem here in Utah. Of course, we saw the Lauren McCluskey instance up at the University of Utah several years ago. Women do bear the brunt in situations like domestic violence. I feel like the Second Amendment has been wildly misinterpreted over the years. So we do need to move forward with any solutions that are going to work. They need to be big. We can't just settle for moderate stuff, but things like red flag laws, universal background checks, raising the purchase age. Thank you, Senator Kitchen, I saw in the room, I think, for running a bill on that. And waiting periods. We need to look at gun insurance to address the costs of owning a firearm. I think that would move us a long ways towards making it more expensive, just like we do with driving and with our cars.
Thank you, candidate Farrell.
Yeah, to the question about what this tells me, I mean, it tells me that I see why women say they'll choose the bear over the man. Like, the greatest cause of death to women is men. And I think it reflects that women as mothers or future mothers of children that are gunned down in schools or victims of domestic violence. Like, we are obviously failing as a society in a lot of ways. See, Donald Trump is president again. But yes, I would sponsor legislation to permanently ban assault weapons. That's not crazy. We've done it before. We did it in 1994 when it was allowed to lapse in 2004. Thank you, George W. Bush. Fatalities rose sharply. Like, it works. We did it before. It's legal. First of all, D.C. Heller was wrongly decided. We should ignore the Supreme Court on this. If the Supreme Court strikes down a gun law that we pass, guess what? We pass another one. Jam them up. Let them have to constantly strike us down. Universal background checks, national red flag laws, mandating secure storage of firearms, requiring permits, safety training, and licensing and insurance. As Senator Bluen said, like, we let 16-year-olds drive a car and like they have to get insurance, they have to permit, they have a license. Like, this is a portable weapon of death. And then I would increase funding to CDC and NHI to treat gun violence as a public health issue. I understand.
Thank you. Thank you, candidate Lopez Chavez.
Every time, man. I want to talk about how much money the National Rifle Association has currently bought out all of our congressional delegation. And the Second Amendment has been misinterpreted, which is why I would move to eliminate automatic assault rifles. But going back to the NRA, we are a country that's fueled with a pipeline that loves to incentivize gun ownership, but doesn't care about the responsibility of owning it. So I believe in Second Amendment rights, but that doesn't remove any of the consequences of ownership, which is why we need safe carrying. We need to raise the age in which you can purchase a gun. Right now, we need to record these weapons, and we need to understand there are 8 weapons per household right now in America. We have 0.7 children per household. So that should show you our priorities as a nation. It's backwards, and we need to remove gun places from the safest places, which are our schools, our hospitals, and our places of worship. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Villarreal.
You know, and maybe this is the West Side showing, but I don't hear anybody mentioning gun violence in the streets and gang violence, and that is the largest source of gun violence. Just point blank. Like, it's easy to throw a huff and puff when an affluent school gets shot up, but when young poor kids are shooting themselves in the street, the conversation goes quiet. My frustration is that I've seen that. West Valley has had years where our violent crime rates were almost as high as Chicago. I think we we're the same violent crime rate as Chicago one year. And that's fundamentally an issue of income inequality. It's fundamentally an issue of young folks not having access to health care or mental health care. That's fundamentally an issue where people don't have what they need, and we are creating not only those school shooters, but we're also creating young children from broken families who have to go into gang crime in order to feel something.
Thank you, candidate McAdams.
You know, as candidates, we got these questions a little bit in advance and had time to reflect on them. And as I read this question, my first thought was, again, what are my positions on gun safety? And I'll go through those. But as I read it more closely and talked about it with my wife, Julie, she said, the question is, the impact on, why are women ranking this number one? And so I forced myself a little bit out of my own positions on guns to think about why women see this as a much higher priority. And I think we can learn something from that. So I think about with women who I know who live in fear of a violent partner and have a restraining order. And it's too easy for people to gain access to weapons. And yes, I care about this. And look, like many of the candidates here, I support background checks. I voted to support background checks, red flag laws, keeping guns out of the hands of convicted felons and domestic abusers, closing the gun show loophole, banning assault weapons and bump stocks. But I think there's something instructive here to say, while we all care about this, and I think Senator Reeby's right, this is all of our issue, it is weighing more heavily on women, and why? And there's something there that we can learn from that as elected officials, that this is something that's weighing on women's ability to feel safe in our community.
Thank you.
And we need to do better.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson?
Yes, this issue, of course, is one where you balance personal safety and constitutional rights. It's an argument that continues, and I really appreciate the number where it says this is an issue that dominates amongst women. If you look at the heinous crimes, the murders that have been committed, a lot of us we're quite vulnerable, even sitting in this room. And you look and you say, on a number of these crimes that have been committed, have they been repeat offenders? What is their criminal history? And I believe that there needs to be some real accountability with our sheriff, with our district attorney, to make sure that repeat offenders are not turned back to continue to crime. And when it comes to women, I don't want it to sound too simple, but I believe that we should be looking at self-defense courses. We should be looking at learning to operate firearms. We do need to be looking at situation awareness. Where are the exit routes? Where can we be safe? And so I think this is a great issue to have conversations about. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, candidate Mohammed.
I love Luis's answer first and foremost. Amazing, because he talked about the fundamental issue first and then talked about the gun policy that we want to address. First, we really need to focus on what are the fundamental concerns that people are having. Why would somebody do such an evil thing? And a lot of the time, it comes from economic instability. Economic instability. Next thing I want to say is safety comes from that stability. And as it comes to access to guns, we need to do the things that everybody knows. The Second Amendment is not an exemption for very common sense, responsible background checks, red flag laws. We all agree on this. It doesn't matter where you are on the aisle, and there's no reason we should not be able to pass this. And if you're taking money from NRA and that's the reason why, well, maybe you shouldn't be in Congress. So yeah, that's really what I just want to leave it there. I'm going to leave it on the punchline.
Thank you all so much. We're going to move to question number 10, the year-round relationship.
Last two questions.
Ooh. 27% of respondents said what would make their vote actually matter is policymakers asking for young people's input year-round, not just at election time. Only 3% said they needed more youth-led civic opportunities. So the question is, if elected, how specifically will you maintain a relationship with Gen Z constituents between elections? Not in a tweet, but in your actual calendar and your actual office. We're going to start with candidate Blowen.
Thank you. Yeah, I would put myself out there as the most accessible elected official in the state right now. I am happy to meet with folks. You can look at my calendar. I'm out there. We were out at the University of Utah just a couple nights ago, and I am so excited to meet with young people, to continue building out events like this, to bring people in. We can make commitments to that. It's so exciting to have people paying attention for once. We have gotten so off track here. So I've worked with constituents, with young people, to bring legislation forward on the Great Salt Lake and other issues. Just this year, we looked at a couple bills. They were able to pass one of them, and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to bring people to DC. We're going to be here working with them, and certainly I think the digital online piece is important for an audience that frankly spends too much time online, as I do as well. And we need to make sure that we are both there where they're at, but also creating fun and interesting and exciting opportunities in the community.
Thank you. Candidate McAdams.
Yeah, I think engaging with young people or engaging with on issues is much more than just tweeting and being out there on social media, but it really means really listening and engaging. So, when I was mayor and homelessness was on my agenda, certainly I called meetings and met with homeless services providers, but I also spent 3 days and 2 nights living on the streets and experiencing homeless services. I was touched by Senator Reeby, who represents Salt Lake metro area, visiting rural farmers in Logan. This is like going out and reaching out to people where they are. So whether it's Gen Z or whatever the issue is we're working on, it's about going to the voters, going to the people to understand them, not expecting them to come to you. When I was in college, as I mentioned, I sold plasma and worked 2 and 3 jobs to save up money. I wanted to do an internship, and so I did do an internship, but it wasn't paid, and so I had to scrap and save for 9 months in order to have enough money to do that. So it's always been important to me that when I have interns in my office, we pay them, that they shouldn't be selling their plasma to do an internship. All right, I have out of time. Thank you.
Candidate Villarreal.
Ma'am, politics got to be fun again. I'm going to be streaming Minecraft, taking questions from the chat. I also think I've been tabling outside of the bars downtown where all the young people be at, partying. I'd love to see a candidate host like a rave. Like, I'd love to see a politician host a night out at the clubs. You know what I mean? Like we look at these things like, I need to do a town hall and I need to go to get people involved in civic duties and nah, man, let's go shake some at the club. You know what I mean? We gotta get young people involved in a fun way. We gotta get young people to understand that this matters in a way that can be enjoyable. I also think it's important to reach out with local activists. I think the Democrats in the past have been really, really, really poor at working with local organizers, especially here in Utah. I'd like to see an extension of that. I'd like to be amongst the community and work with every single activist group and make sure that I'm bullying other people into doing the same thing, because we need to do that. It's where the young people are at.
Thank you, Candidate Reeby.
Thank you. I'm going to start by saying I went to a rally once, and somebody was standing on the stage, contact your senator, and I'm like, I'm right here. Get your elected leader, and I'm like, I'm right here. So it's hard. It's hard because we want to go to where you want us, but you're not coming to where we are either. So I'm going to be a little bit of a mom here and say I go to lots of meetings. I go to school board meetings, city council meetings, Senate meetings. I go to meetings. And there's not a lot of people that don't have gray hair there. So I'm just going to call you out a little bit. But if you want to have a meeting like this, I'll show up. I have town halls all the time. You don't come. So if you would like to have something fun, invite me, because my stuff isn't cool. So I'd love to do your cool stuff. So invite me. I'll go anywhere. I go to farms. I go to karaoke. I go to bars. I'll go anywhere. Please invite me.
Thank you, Candidate Farrell.
Yeah, I mean, we're running to be a representative. We should be representative. We should actually listen to the people that we're elected to do things for. I don't know what the point is otherwise if we're just listening to like corporate donors and going to 1,000 plate dinners only. Like, we should, so my calendar will be publicly available. You'll see who I'm talking to, where I am at all times. If you want to come see me in my Salt Lake City office or in my office in DC, and I know that's, people aren't flying out. But then remaining connected with groups like Ignite Utah is going to be really valuable. During the, after the 2008 election, we had a huge wave of Democratic enthusiasm. Obama won. Oh, look, amazing. We've turned the tide. America's going to be blue. And then we dropped the ball. Like, the Democratic Party completely dropped the ball, disengagement from youth. And then very quickly, I'm at 15 seconds. Nobody's going to mention this, but I think things I would push in Congress are electoral reform to connect with Gen Z constituents to make it actually, like, your vote counts. For example, getting rid of the Electoral College. So, hey, everybody's vote counts. Proportional representation, so that, like, hey, we don't have gerrymandered districts, which we currently have, but every single person's vote counts in every state. So more people are going to be engaged. Like, if you're a Republican in New York, you're not going to vote for president. It doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? Your vote doesn't matter.
Thank you. Candidate Mohammed.
First thing I want to say is your wife is so proud of you right now. It is very wholesome to watch your face. It made me smile, actually. So I want to have a more substantive and specific answer to this question. I think there's over 10,000 bills that get proposed on the federal level in a year. And for any individual, no matter how intelligent they are, and no matter what their experience is, to say that they know the right approach to this healthcare bill, about this hospital, and then the next hour we're talking about this AI bill, and the next hour we're talking about should we invest in this bill, this bridge. If you don't know the issues, you're not going to be able to represent it well. And the only way you can represent it well is by doing exactly that. Going out to the collective that you represent, leveraging their expertise, leveraging their lived experiences, leveraging their intelligence. Now the question is, saying that you're going to listen and all these things is a beautiful thing, it's the right thing, but how do you actually do that in a functional way? My campaign has done something unique. On our campaign website, when it comes to our platform, it's not only a platform that I came up with, it's a platform that's also built by the feedback of each and every one of you. And there's a section that has a forum for you to provide feedback to the different ideas that I propose. But in addition, propose your own ideas, because I don't know everything. And I'll do the same and when I'm in services too, with the bill website. But yeah.
Candidate Robinson?
This reminds me of a phone call that I got a week or two ago, and it was from one of our congressional leaders here in Utah, and it said, if you would like to join, stay on the phone. You were call number 2014. And I'm thinking, is this the outreach? Is this what we get? And then you look at some of the town hall meetings, and within the party they say, oh, well, we don't hold those anymore because when we show up, it's really hostile. And it's like, no, you got to show up. If you're going to be an elected official, you have to show up. Even if it's hostile, even if they're mad at you, show up, listen, and engage. But also at the state level, we look at this and we say, okay, during a legislative session, they have 1,000 plus bills this time in a 45-day session. And so when we talk about gun violence, when we talk about water issues, when we talk about this, the average person has a very limited window on how they are going to engage with 1,000 bills in a 45-day. Elected officials need to do a lot better on communicating.
Thank you, Candidate Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. I think meeting people where they're at is really critical when it comes to this question, which is why I would propose a policy change. Your congressional members are spending a majority of their time in Washington away from their districts. They need to be able to vote remotely. They need to have access to the districts that they are representing and participating in. And we also need to pay our interns, but what we really need is a true pipeline that both educates the public so that they know how to lobby at the local level all the way to federal level. Wasatch Assembly, I see y'all in the corner. Go sign up if you want to go learn how to civically participate in your community. But in all seriousness, as a council member or even at the highest levels of office, it is inaccessible for most people unless you can afford a multi-million-dollar contract with a lobbyist. We should be elevating our community voices, and we should not be enriching those that can afford to purchase lobbying efforts on the Hill.
Thank you. I believe that was everyone. So we're going to move on to question number 11. The 46% question. We asked every single respondent, what would make your vote feel like it matters? 46% said the same thing, seeing real changes in daily life on housing, jobs, and debt. 17% said nothing would change their mind. We're going to start with candidate Lopez Chavez.
When I read this question and this statement, it actually made me really sad. First, for those in the room that believe their vote doesn't matter or that nothing would change, I want to tell you this system has failed us. And validate that feeling, but also say that doesn't eliminate the responsibility that each of us have, especially the elected officials that are running to be your congressional representative, to commit to act with urgency and transparency. Yes, we need direct action, and policy isn't sexy, I'm going to tell you right now. It really isn't. But we can have solutions in place that prevent the violence that we're seeing and put a backstop and end so we can actually focus on passing bills that make life a little bit easier. And so I know what that feels like, and I can tell you right now that not everyone in this room will leave and exit with the same protections in place. We need to make sure that we have equity in place in our stances and our policies, but to those that want to be involved, I'm telling you, I want each of y'all to run for office one day. That is the fastest way that we can get solutions introduced with urgency that represent our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McAdams.
Yeah, thank you. Look, you have a right to believe that the system doesn't work for you because it hasn't, not fully and not really for a long time. There was a time when government worked for people. There was a time when Republicans were willing to work with it instead of break it or privatize it or sell it off to the largest bidder. But here's the thing that I know about change, having worked on issues and been able to move them forward. Look, the people at Stonewall, they were just trying to survive the night, right? The people waiting in bread lines in 1932 didn't know what the New Deal was. When I was traveling the state of Utah, working with conservative legislators to pass LGBTQ non-discrimination ordinances, people didn't know what that was, but we got it done. And change happens incrementally, and it happens through hard work. Progress in 1,000 small things, oftentimes it doesn't feel like enough until they are, until we get back to them and we actually see the progress. So let me tell you one specific thing that I will commit to. We can't go backwards. We can't lose the progress we've made. So if I'm elected to Congress, I will vote to codify Roe, to protect the right to women's reproductive health care and abortion access that we've known, and we've seen what's happened over the last few years since that right was revoked. But I also want to move us forward, and that takes a lot of small things. It's a group project that we all have to work on together.
Thank you. Candidate Reeby.
Thank you. So when I decided to run, I met a person who was representing me. He lived in his mother's basement. He didn't have a job. He didn't have kids. He wasn't married. And I said, how does that guy represent me? So I decided I was going to run for office, because when you're not heard, you need to speak louder. And when you're not being heard, you need to work harder. And so when I think about who should be representing me, I want someone who's going to show up to a job every day and know what it's like to feel, what it's like to have kids, bring them to daycare, pay their taxes, get insurance. I mean, I want to be represented by someone like me, not by somebody who's not like me. So when you look at the candidates up here, look at the person that's having the same feelings that you are and say, how can you bring that experience to your job every day? As a teacher, I work all across the whole entire valley, and I can tell you that your feelings are not unique to you. Everyone feels frustrated. Everyone feels disenfranchised, but we need to dig in deeper and we need to work harder, and I see that in every family. And before I end today, I want to do some housekeeping. At the end of the time, please bring all of our flyers forward and put them in neat little piles to save us all time. So that's my mom coming out at me. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson.
The engagement process through policy is really fascinating because you look and you say, all right, what's an issue that is bothering me, and how do I make a difference? For some of you that live in Mill Creek, Cottonwood Heights, Holiday, a handful of years ago, I was aware of a retail water issue that was negatively impacting billions of dollars worth of home values. And I talked to some of the leaders at the state level, and they said, well, you didn't know that. And they said, but come and meet with the governor. So I went in and met with the governor, and they said, tell him what's happening. And so I told him what was happening. And he said, then I want this fixed. Almost every mayor in the area sent the governor a letter that said, do not look at these water issues. A year or two later, after we brought everybody to the table, almost every one of those mayors signed an op-ed encouraging the voters to vote for those issues, saying it's about fairness, it's about transparency, and it's about equal treatment. What I am saying is the process can be very frustrating. You can feel like your voice doesn't matter, but there is a process to go through. Your voice does.
Thank you. Candidate Villarreal.
Every time I've ever met, and so I've been an activist for a long time and I've been around a lot of people in those circles. Every time I meet somebody who goes from my vote doesn't matter to like, ooh, I'm fervently fighting for something I want, it actually doesn't matter whether or not their vote matters at that point. They have hope. They have hope. And I view this question in the light of like, realistically, it just seems to me like the Democratic Party has failed at creating hope, at generating hope. We've seen people champion that hope. The progressive movement as a whole has had lighthouse after lighthouse, Bernie, then AOC, now Zoran. These are pillars of hope. Now, does each individual person think that their vote fully matters at any point in time? I don't know. But with hope, it shouldn't matter. They're going to fight for that anyways. You're not going to give up.
Thank you, Candidate Blumen.
Thank you. Luis is absolutely right. We have failed to give people hope, and it's because we keep compromising our values and working with people who are selling us down the river time and time again. So I will also make a commitment to vote to codify Roe. We also need to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which would allow people on Medicaid to access reproductive health care. Ben McAdams voted against that when he was in Congress as well. I am not taking corporate or APAC money. We need to get those big influences out of our politics. That is skewing our direction in so many different ways. On day one, I'm going to be out there investigating ICE facilities to make sure that we are using our congressional powers to actually make a difference. I'm going to sign on to Medicare for All. I'm going to sign on to the America's Red Rock Wilderness Act to make sure that we protect our valuable public spaces. And we are going to build a movement that is bigger than any one piece of legislation. That is absolutely the right answer that we need to move forward with.
Thank you, Candidate Farrell.
Yeah, to the 17% who have effectively given up, I'd say, yeah, I get you. If you were born in 1998, you've been able to vote in 3 presidential elections. Donald Trump has been a candidate in every single one of them, and he's won twice. That's horrible. The system is not designed to give a shit about you. It's not designed to work for you. It's designed to work for rich and powerful people like Donald Trump and his friend Jeff Epstein. Like, what we need is younger folks in office who've actually experienced things that Americans are going through. Like Chuck Grassley, senator from Iowa, he was born before sliced bread. That's not a joke. That's insane. Like we need to get rid of the gerontocracy. We need younger folks in office who've struggled with student debt, who have struggled with healthcare issues, who have actually struggled and been like a real person. Like one specific commitment that I'm willing to make today is that it's not going to be substantive. It's going to be I will physically put my body on the line to stop the evil Trump regime and his Republican lackeys from doing bad things. Like if they want to pass a voter ID bill, like I will lay down on the House floor. You have to step on me. You have to beat the shit out of me. Throw me out of the House chamber. Like that should be the bare minimum.
Thank you. And last, Candidate Mohammed.
The reason these folks feel like their vote doesn't matter is because they're not tangibly feeling the impact of a different representation. And the reason that's happening is because our issue in politics is not left and it's not right, it's top and it's bottom. And both the folks on the left and the folks on the right that are these centrists, that are these establishment Democrats, establishment Republicans are serving the exact same special interests that have hot lobbyists that are Republican. I've worked in government relations. I know how it is. They got this person for that guy, this person for that guy. So what you need is representation that's not taking corporate PAC money, representation that's not taking foreign interest PAC money. And then you know that their incentive is in the right place, which is their heart. And every single one of us, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, know what's right and know what's wrong, and that we need affordable housing, that we need affordable healthcare, that we need affordable childcare, and all of these other issues. So that's one thing that you can count on me, is to hold my integrity to the nth degree and take on those very people that I worked for and understand better than anybody else. I will be the only person with big tech experience on Capitol Hill and best suited to hold it.
Thank you. Well, can we give all the panelists a round of applause for all the candidates? Thank you all so much. So this was the end of the panel, and I'm now going to hand it to Janessa.
Hello, testing, awesome. So we want to get a quick picture. All of y'all can stand up. We're going to have Ignite's team join you up here on the stage for a quick pic. And then, because the panel went a little bit over, we're just going to cut right into candidate mingling time. So if any of y'all had any specific questions, this is your opportunity to talk with the candidates, get some more food, get some water, get some Coca-Cola and some Sprite. And thank y'all for being here. Yeah. Okay, do we want to do one audience question on foreign policy? Because that did not come from our agenda. Okay. That was not an issue that came up on our survey, but we understand that's an important congressional issue. And so you volunteered as tribute. Do you want to ask the question?
First, I am a Palestinian guy that lived in America for 42 years now. My question, I've been asked and interviewed, and I met with congressional leaders, that the first question they asked me, do you condemn Hamas? None of them asked me, why do we have Hamas? My question to the panel, do you think our foreign policy is representing our values as Americans? And what our government is doing in the third world does serve our patriotic interest? In particular in Palestine, since the genocide have been happening for 75 years now. And the first people who have been thrown under the bus by our congressional leaders and members are the Palestinians. They even denied us the most simple right of resisting, which is boycott, diverse, and sanction. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 60 seconds. Go ahead, Obaid, and call the candidates.
Okay, awesome. Let's start with candidate Farrell.
Thank you, Mustafa. I really appreciate this question. To answer your first question, I don't think that our foreign policy represents what we think America's values are. It unfortunately represents what America's values historically are. Like, we've been at war 95% of the history of this country. It's disgusting. If I'm in Congress, like, we are pulling back any aid to Israel. Like, we're not going to support a genocide there. We're pulling back any money towards funding the stupid war in Iran. We're putting an end to whatever the hell whatever incursion we have going on in Venezuela. Like, we could actually spread American values and create like lifelong, generation-long allies if we used the incredible force and wealth that we have to, I don't know, like, help people instead of shoot them. Like in Gaza, what we should be doing right now, we should have troops there that are handing out food. Like, if the IDF wants to shoot at American troops who are handing out food, bring it. Like, that's not happening. Like, we should be using our leverage as the most powerful country in the world to actually help people. Like, we station troops in Saudi Arabia, and then we're amazed that the Middle East is angry with us. Like, come on, people. Like,
Thank you. Let's go with candidate Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. And thank you, Mustafa, for asking this important question. I think what we really need to understand is, yes, we need to stop aid to Israel. They have plenty of funding right here. But what's happening is American imperialism is imploding all over the world as a way to distract from the fact that our president is a rapist. We need to prosecute these criminals that are acting collectively and globally to constrict and harm working people all over the world, from Palestine to Venezuela to now Cuba. It goes on and on and on. And what I'm seeing is we are not prosecuting any of our corporations. We're not prosecuting Netanyahu, who is a war criminal, even in Israel. And to ensure that we have a legacy of American diplomacy and democracy, that it's being seeded collectively in a way that is compassionate and dignified and not causing war or permanent harm that is decentralizing. We are destabilizing more countries than we are creating democratic practices.
Thank you. Candidate McAdams.
Look, Donald Trump promised an end to foreign wars, and what did he do and he also promised to bring down the prices of goods. So first thing he does is he goes in and injects us into what could be an endless war in Iran with no articulation of what our goals are, what our objectives are, when do we conclude. It's a bottomless pit. And it also is going to drive up costs for the American people, whether it's gasoline, cost of food, cost of shipping, everything we're going to see go up. So this, first of all, is not a reflection of our foreign policy. I support holding the Trump administration accountable. We need a Congress that actually exercises their constitutional duty to authorize or not authorize the president to go to war. And when the president ignores Congress and enters into an unconstitutional war, we need a Congress that will stand up. I supported the Kana Massey legislation that would have held Donald Trump accountable. Unfortunately, no one else in the Utah delegation did, even though they've spoken about this before. That is not acceptable. The focus in Israel needs to be getting aid.
Thank you. Let's go with candidate Robinson.
I have spent the last 15 years on local policies here in Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City, land issues, water issues. And when it comes to foreign policy, I am not an expert on foreign policy. I will wait until I have verified information. I would love to discuss this issue, but when it comes to the Iran war that has recently occurred, I have not been privy to the information that they are relying on. And so I will wait until I have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Villarreal.
No offense, Ben. I'm really not here to catfight. I don't know if you haven't seen it, but
Stick to the questions, please.
no, I am sorry. No, what I mean to say is I have heard Trump and various administration officials say that we're doing this because Israel dragged us into it. They keep changing the story here, there, and another way, but they keep letting it slip. Because they don't have any other justification. And so if you watch a lot of, because I watch like basically every press release that Trump and his administration does, they slip up all the time, man. They're really bad at keeping information secret. And so what we're seeing is the military-industrial complex and all of our economic interests, which are aligned with Israel, are currently trying to engage in a war so that Palantir can train their AI and we can build more missiles and do more contracts with Northrop Grumman. This is the fundamental issue, is just that Israel is just a capital state that runs off of stealing our money from our capital class. And so if we can't recognize that, then we don't have a foreign policy that's focused on ethical.
Thank you. Candidate Blowen.
Thank you.
You say Bluen or Mohammed?
Blowen.
Oh, okay.
Again, during his time in Congress, Ben McAdams voted against a war powers resolution that would have restrained us from action in Iran. This was a Democratic-led proposal that Mike Lee actually supported. We need to reframe our foreign policy. We need to remove our support of the genocide that is happening in Gaza. We need folks who are going to work hard to keep us out of foreign intervention, to rebuild the diplomatic corps, the humanitarian aid that has protected us here in America and folks around the world for years. So this is such a critical time. It's a stupid war, as we've heard. We got dragged into it by Israel. There's no reason for us to be there. Our gas prices are going through the roof. It accomplishes nothing, just like the conflict in Venezuela, just like the other proposals to go into Cuba. All these things are ridiculous, and it's because we keep electing politicians who are beholden to the military-industrial complex.
Thank you. Candidate Mohammed.
You said you want verifiable information. I will give you verifiable information. We just recently blew up a girls' school. I'll give you more verifiable information. It's been 75 years in Palestine, as you call it, Palestine, that there's been a military occupation, that there's been an economic blockade, and these people are suffering. These people have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and they simply want to live a dignified life. I'll give you some more verifiable information. 80% of civilian residential infrastructure being blown up, my friend, is not something that you need more evidence on. That tells you the answer. There's a genocide happening in Gaza. What's happening in the West Bank is unacceptable. What's happening in Congo for the purpose of exploitation and corporate greed is unacceptable. What's happening in Sudan at the hands of the RSF and the UAE is unacceptable. If you want a candidate who understands big tech, where the public forum is now residing, and you want somebody who's going to fight for our freedom of expression, you want somebody who's not going to
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. We're gonna go with the. Feel free to connect with Mohammed and all the other candidates in the mingling time. But so we're gonna go with our last candidate, candidate Reeby.
Thank you. When I think about all that was just said, I can tell you right now, America is in the weakest place it's ever been. We have expended all of our military fighting wars for other people, and we are here to protect aggressors, but we are not here to hide genocide. I can tell you that. The other thing is that we can't find an ally right now to help us open that Hamas Strait. How sad that we have no allies anymore. This is what this administration has done to us. So when I think about how weak we are right now, it's awful. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And Janessa, so are we going to do a picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just going to take a quick picture with all the candidates and the Ignite Utah team. And we just built a new website, igniteutahaction.org. Please check it out. Follow us on Instagram, Ignite Utah Action, and donate so we can continue to empower and mobilize Gen Z voters in Utah. Thank you so much for being here
Bring
today.
the flyers forward and save us all some time. You're the best.
And also make sure that you guys are following our Instagram page. We really want to hit more followers. So please scan the QR code and it's going to direct you to our social media pages, but also like websites. So thank you all so much.